All right, everyone, it's time for a response to a very funny article written by our good friend Jared Holt. I'm almost mentioning him as much as Phil Scott at this point. First, let me say thank you to him for actually paying me sort of a half-assed compliment by insinuating that I was one of the few people who's actually managed to properly and effectively debate some major figure of the alt-right. I do appreciate that, although it's not actually true. There are others that do the same thing. But the article itself is not so funny. It's defamatory in nature, specifically geared towards attacking like Andy Warski, Tonkasaw, Medica, some of these other figures that do sort of the Bloodsports stuff. They're involved in this general lexicon of content. By the way, you wouldn't believe how many smaller, similar style shows there are on YouTube. We're talking probably hundreds at this point. It's being promulgated because it's a good strategy for bringing in viewers. The Bloodsports thing works. By the way, supply and demand, the supply will continue to grow because demand is sky high, and right now there are only a few larger shows that do this. It's going to become more prevalent over time. Why do you think I'm looking actively into getting like the soundproofing, probably a better microphone setup and some of that stuff, so that I can get in on it? Yeah, I want to have a live show. It'll probably just be weekly, but I definitely want to make one. Anytime I do live comment, a few thousand people are watching. It's pretty good considering that's not really what I'm known for. But let's get into a little bit of the article and go through why it's basically bullcrap. And it's not on their YouTube yet. Like usually they pair a YouTube video with all their articles. They did with the last one, and I can't even remember how many downvotes there were because they were attacking. You know, when you attack a dozen major YouTubers in one article, and their fans hear about it, they tend to raid the YouTube video. Maybe they've learned their lesson, they won't even bother this time. But article archived, of course, in the description. Welcome to YouTube Bloodsports, the alt-right's newest recruiting tool. Yes, that's right, folks. Once again, the same fallacies as before. Number one fallacy, guilt by association. Oh, Warski is doing something wrong. The Kumite is doing wrong. Styx does something wrong when he talks to somebody who's outside of the mainstream. We should be boring like you. We should be like CNN. Anytime that we talk to somebody who's outside of the Overton window, we should disrespect them openly and hold our heads and say, oh goodness, I can't believe what I'm hearing. I need to clutch my pearls and virtue signal and say, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm not even going to debate you. I'm just going to shout over you. That's what we're supposed to do. It's supposed to be like Sargon's reaction to Spencer on steroids. You know, no disrespect to Sargon, but that was a shouting match between you two for the most part. It's supposed to be like 10 times more unlistenable. That's crazy talk, dude. It's just not going to happen. So the first fallacy is guilt by association. Well, you talked to somebody that I gave some label. This person I consider to be a Nazi. You talked to them, therefore you're a Nazi sympathizer. You know, you've done that before on your former smear article where you called me like a grand Nazi gatekeeper. That's why I thought it was funny when me and Sargon were trotted out to debate Spencer. Supposedly, we're just like the bodyguards that stand outside of his castle. So fucking, why do people have a problem with it? Why not just do what you want and just call us Nazis? And then, by the way, it'll be funny because Holt will probably say, well, I'm obsessed with him or something. You talk about me openly in the article, at least briefly, so I'm going to respond if I want. And by the way, when people insult him on Twitter for an article that is clearly wrong, when all of my fans and Warski's fans, like the Kumite list or stuff, dogpile him, he'll say, well, I'm being mistreated by the far right. See, I told you they hated me. Well, yeah, you keep defaming people. It's not about far right at this point. It's always been about independent content creators versus the lamestream. You're part of the latter, we're part of the former. In that sense, I'm going to stand with someone who's like a progressive or a communist before I'm going to stand with the neoliberals and neocons. Absolutely, because it's a new paradigm. And then fallacy number two is this weird argument that's made. I've seen this made by others too, whereby the assumption is made that, like, for instance, if I platform, as in have a conversation with that doesn't involve me saying fuck you over and over, with Spencer or Johnson or Enoch or somebody like that, if it's anything other than pure unadulterated hate, with me reacting in a very juvenile fashion and shitting myself in rage and then cutting the other person off, that somehow magically they're the ones that gain from that. I don't gain anything. Like, there's no possibility that if I make a reasoned, sane, quiet argument with logic and reason of any kind, there's no way that I prevail. They always win. The Nazi always wins, somehow. Why would that be the case? Are you saying that their arguments are just better than the arguments made by, oh, no, classical liberals, so-called, liberalists, libertarians, minarchist Orion-cap, a lame streamer like a neoliberal like yourself, a progressive, a socialist? You're saying that no other group has as good of arguments as the alt-right. That they're inevitably going to win anytime they see the light of day. Anytime they go on a channel, they're the ones that grow. Even if it's a channel is smaller than theirs. Like, I don't have the largest channel. I'm sure Richard Spencer, his YouTube presence is certainly smaller than mine. And I don't know about his podcast total, but it's got to be substantial. It's not like he's a tiny user on this platform or any other. No, he gets in the national news and stuff. The only time I get in the news is when somebody like you wants to smear me. I haven't quite made it yet. I'm waiting for 250,000. I have a feeling that it'll be like when I hit 100,000 and all of a sudden 3 or 4 articles crop up talking about me. I have a feeling that when I hit 250,000, there'll be a new wave of them from sites larger than yours. By the way, I looked, and it was funny. Like, some of these people, I can't even imagine. Like Warski at this point, with his audience large and growing, some of these others. How many times they lap Right Wing Watch the entire site when it comes to their traffic. Now, also, if you look at the parent company, and Right Wing Watch is a big part of it, they got like $1 million budget. And someone like me, I can have 5 times the audience on a monthly basis. And I can do it for, well, I've got a laptop. It's a good laptop, but it's just a computer. I've got a good microphone, but $100 will get you one. I've got a good webcam, $60 will get you this same model. The whole setup, like desk and all, is like $2,000 or a little bit over that. As opposed to them, they operate on like what, a 6-figure a month kind of budget. And they put out an article that 10 people look at. It's rather funny. And then they have their YouTube channel, which is at this point probably going to get lapped by the Kumite this year. So it's like MTV News. Nobody cares about it. It's middleman media. It's like semi-independent. It's corporatized, and it's not as fun. But you do realize, dude, you're being wrong. I say that to Holt. Like, he derides me, and he derides like Warski and Tonkasaw. And there are so many names here. Let's see. I'll read through the list. These are some of the white nationalist YouTube figures. Even though some of these people have presences off YouTube that are bigger. Funnily enough, I don't know if he gets this. J.F. Garapi, Tara McCarthy, Richard Spencer, Colin Robertson, Millennial Woes, Greg Johnson, Pinovich, Enoch, James Alsop, Nick, I'll probably get this one, Nick Fuentes, I think, or Fuentes, I don't know, and I'm not trying to insult this. Tim, I think Gianette Baked Alaska. Now, more often than not, these white nationalist personalities have been paired against conservative opponents who offer incredibly weak pushback to their arguments. Only on a few occasions have they faced true, strong counterarguments. One of these debates featuring Sargon and Tarl Warwick, Styx-Axenhammer, thank you very much, debating Spencer and Garapi became the highest trending live video. That's because we made decent arguments. That's because it was, in general, it was an okay debate. At times it was a shouting match. That draws people in too. That has nothing to... What are you talking about, dude? You're crediting it with being #1 trending at the time for the live streams. It was monumental. So many people were fucking watching. So the pressure was on. And the chat's roaring by like a freight train. And it's great. And this is the one that you use as like the one counter example to your own argument. Well, yeah, there's a reason why it was trending, dude. If it's just a Nazi saying Nazi things and then somebody offering no real rebuttal to what they're saying, who's going to want to watch that, dude? It's not going to happen. A show that tries to do that over and over will collapse. It'll probably get abandoned. It won't have any fans. It'll just become a small echo chamber. It's the way it works. People want to see it's a blood sport. Well, then you have to have a counter argument that's at least somewhat paired and also conservative. I'm not a conservative personality, dude. I lean to the right. Yeah, I'm right wing on taxes. I'm further right than Ronald Reagan on something like guns. That doesn't make me a right winger, though, dude. Like, even some of these ethno-nationalists, they echo like left-wing points at this point. What do you think National Socialism actually stands for? I'm more on the other side of the debate when it comes to maybe some of the views on economic principles, certainly within the alt-right. It's totally goofy. Because these are the same people. If I talk to an alt-righter, they expect me to do one of two things. Either say, oh, well, you know, be a proud Nazi and be open about it. Like, they'll try to get you to go way, way far out there in right field where you're like, oh, well, Hitler did something wrong because the death toll was too low. Someone who's really, really, really out there. They either want you to be like that or they want you to act with rage. They want it to devolve into a shouting match where the only reason that the alt-right or the Nazi or whatever is there is to be ridiculed. This is what the lamestream does. This is, by the way, also the reason why they fear us. They realize that we're capable of having an interesting conversation with people we don't agree with. The lamestream doesn't do that. Look, when people on the left, by the way, I'll say this in closing. When people on the far left, or I would say the neoliberals, when they have a problem with this, there's one fundamental reason. For a long time, neoliberals and neoconservatives ruled the airwaves, they ruled cable, they ruled sort of the early wave internet for the most part. They are the kings of all media, basically. And the only time they would have somebody on a fringe movement or someone who's out there on board was to mock them. It's like you look back at Ron Paul. He was openly laughed at and mocked decades ago for his views on gay marriage, for his views on smoking marijuana, for his views on war, the role of government surveillance. He distrusted it. People under Reagan, they're like, oh, well, you're a pinko commie if you don't want the government to spy on you. And look, people have embraced that now in time. But at the time, he was outside the Overton window severely, and he was mocked. He was laughed at. The lamestream doesn't want to talk to a far-righter, a far-lefter, a libertarian, a minarchist or ANCAP. It doesn't want to talk to an anarchist purely speaking, an anarcho-communist. Doesn't want to talk to a Green Party politician, a libertarian politician, a constitutionalist, a Nazi, a commie. It doesn't matter. Anything outside of their very narrow worldview that ingratiates corporations and bankers, basically, and their political allies and a handful of like bureaucrats and so-called activists that share all the corrupt blood money around. Anything outside which challenges it, the only time they'll talk to them at all is to mock them. Otherwise, they just defame or ignore. That's exactly what they're attempting to do to the creators block now, isn't it? And this is exactly, some of the people that they're mentioning, not the alt-righters, but the people supposedly platforming them, it's like a laundry list of names associated with what I said weeks ago, which is this new creators block. It's a block of people who aren't ourselves maybe even so concerned with ideology itself as actually interacting with people of different ideologies, like great communicators as opposed to great activism. Well, you know, if Holt wants to do activism, you go ahead and do it, but don't then turn around and be livid on Twitter when all of our fans tell you how you're wrong and then try to cast them off as Nazis. Like, that bothers me more. It's like if somebody says, well, you know, Strook's platformed a Nazi or something. Okay, go ahead and say that if you want. It's like, I don't give a fuck. I'm not paid enough by you to give a fuck. But when you go after my fans and call them Nazis, or you call them bigots, or you say, oh, this person's so disrespectful, trying to intimidate me, they believe lies. No, you're a propagandist, dude. That's clearly what you are. This article is all sorts of wrong. It's all sorts of messed up. Race War Live with Andy Warski is the #1 show. You take a readout that's not even by, I believe, Warski himself. And then you allude to like the Kraut and Tea server actually being based on science and attempting to go after like actual Nazis. Did you read the list of people that were on there? Did you actually bother to read who was being targeted? Not all those people declare themselves to be even right-wing, let alone alt-right. Let alone the part of the alt-right that you could reasonably construe as like having Nazi sympathy, as opposed to maybe a garden variety identitarian. One reason why I stopped bothering to one reason why the last time I chatted with Spencer, like last week, was just about Depeche Mode, I'm beyond it. Because what happened is I'm sitting there and I'm saying, well, you know, I'm fundamentally libertarian in most of my beliefs. And so I get sort of invited on to you know, debate Spencer on this topic, and then Sargon and others are there. And I figure, well, that'll be a good time, and, you know, I can make my points. I can make my argument for my Stixist worldview, which is the category I now use. Now, I don't want to be associated with anyone else's manufactured category. I want my own, so you can be a Stixist now. And it's basically whatever the hell I happen to say I believe in at any given time. It's a malleable ideology. It's pretty good shit. And then, in the immediate wake of debating Spencer, I guess it's because I didn't become livid and say, well, Spencer, you're so evil, you know, you want to gas everyone. Because I didn't do that, All of a sudden I have a bunch of people with General Mao avatars or Hammer and Sickle in their Twitter username dogpiling me and saying, well, Styx is like far right, evil Nazi, he enables the Nazis. There's a reason why I'm no longer going to bother debating alt-righters then. And then when I put out my video saying exactly that, like basically the way the left so-called has treated me was so despicable, so fucking defamatory, and so absolutely wrong in every possible way that I'm not going to do their fucking dirty work that they're too talentless to do for them. When I point that out, you say, oh, showing his true colors, haha, he's actually like a Nazi. Well, you know, you're going to reap what you sow, dude. Our audience collectively is so much more massive than Right Wing Watch or even your parent company. That it's like a David and Goliath situation if David didn't have any arms to launch a rock with, you know. So it's going to be pretty funny to see what the fallout is. I can't wait to see like Warski when he responds to it. It'll be like funny as hell. And maybe the Kumite will bring it up since, you know, Tonkasaw I think is listed here. He associates with Warski and Medicare, both of her. This is from Warski's channel. There's like 5 mentions of Medicare on it. So basically, let me get this straight, according to Holt. According to his worldview, anybody who's not part of neoliberaldom is you know, unacceptable. So in other words, if I were to talk to, what's his name, Uruhu or whatever, that one communist who wears the black suit and the red tie all the time and oddly enough is very capitalistic in his production quality. He's not exactly using a potato camera from the Soviet Union, if you know what I'm saying. If I were to have him aboard, that would mean I was platforming if I was able to have a rational discussion with him, would I be platforming communism and thereby supporting communism? Or would it be I'm capable of having a conversation with people who are going to treat me respectful? Look, at least Spencer and Johnson and Enoch and all these others are willing to give me the time of day. But Holt, when I challenged you to a debate, you declined. You said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to come aboard and debate Styx. Why? Is it because you're afraid to debate me, probably? Because you see what I'm capable of doing verbally. You know, I do it every day. I do it for a living. Yeah, there's a reason you don't want to come aboard. If you thought that your arguments were so great, you'd be willing to discuss things with me. Well, I think my arguments are great too. That's why I'm willing to discuss things with people. I don't do it because I'm saying, oh, I'm just going to platform this person and make weak arguments. It's part of some conspiracy to make Right Wing Watch sweat. Apparently, that's what they believe at this point. Okay, well, let's make it a real prediction that they're making. Now, I can have anybody aboard that I want. I do ask that they show rudimentary class. Like if somebody from the alt-right were aboard and they started like chanting racial slurs, yeah, I'd cut them off because it'd be like, you know, you're going to get me kicked off YouTube for that. But if they're willing to be respectful, if they're just making out their arguments, I can provide a counterpoint. I can also discuss something totally non-political with them. I spent half an hour talking to Richard Spencer about 80s music. Well, actually, I think it was closer on an hour that we spent talking. And it was fun. It was great. Yeah, Jared Holt, I don't think wants me to do that. I wonder why. Could it be, maybe he's worried that I'll convert the Nazis, so-called, that he declares to be Nazis, and then he won't have anything to complain about. He'll lose his job because there won't be a Nazi problem anymore. They'll all be Styxists. Then he'll have to do hit pieces on me and say, oh, this open jacket cult is threatening. I'm a moralist now, and I'm worried that my eventual daughter may want to wear an open coat. I'm worried that my wife's son will start imitating Styx's manner of dress. We must stop this evildoer at all costs. Styxism will take over the world, and everyone pretty soon they'll be dressed like this. I eagerly await the day when Jared Holt sees the light, and he gets a leather jacket. You can get these off eBay. They're not that expensive, by the way. Get one of these off eBay. Don't wear an undershirt. It's acceptable if it's really cold. You can wear an undershirt. It has to be a dark color usually, unless it depicts like, you know, some sort of logo that's witchy or occult. No, I don't have Styx Hexen merchandise to the extent of shirts. You can buy a cup. That's about it. But yeah, I eagerly await the day when he comes out in an open jacket, declares his undying fealty to me as his Lord and Master. It'll be a pretty funny day. That's about all. Peace out.